KL Publications presents Mississippi 6, Goon Squad Gone Crazy, retold by Ryan C. Sanders. It was a frigid Friday night in 2023 when Michael Corey Jenkins and Eddie Terrell Parker sat quietly in their modest home in Braxton, Mississippi. The air was heavy with tension, not just in the household, but in the entire community. They lived in Rankin County, a place where black men like them had learned to keep their heads down to avoid confrontation and to hope for the best in a world that often offered little justice. But that night, hope failed them. Without warning, the door to their home was kicked in with a deafening crack. 6 white officers stormed in, members of the so-called Goon Squad, a self-proclaimed group within the Rankin Community Sheriff's Office. They weren't there to serve and protect. They were there to terrorize these men. Led by officers like Brett McAlpin and Hunter Elward, had made it their mission to wield their power against those they saw as lesser. McAlpin's boots hit the floor with a thud as he approached Jenkins while Edward grabbed Parker by the collar and slammed him into the ground. Both men were cuffed before they could react. The abuse that followed was as vicious as it was senseless. They were beaten, kicked, and tased repeatedly, each zap of electricity driving home the cruelty that defined the Goon Squad's twisted sense of justice. The officers didn't stop at physical abuse. Racial slurs were hurled as freely as the punches. And then the mock execution. Elwood, grinning with a sick sense of superiority, forced his gun into Jenkins' mouth and fired. The bullet didn't kill Jenkins, but it shattered his jaw, leaving him bleeding, broken, and withering on the floor. The officers watched with satisfaction, as though they had completed a mission, one they had bragged about in group texts and back rooms for years. But their cruelty knew no bounds. To add insult to injury, they planted drugs in the home, staged a scene to make it look like Jenkins and Parker were criminals. As if it wasn't enough, they used sex toys to further humiliate the men, turning their torment into a grotesque spectacle. For years, the Goon Squad had gotten away with these acts of brutality. They were untouchable, protected by a system that had failed to hold them accountable. They had terrorized drug users, minor dealers, and anyone else they saw fit to brutalize. Their reign was unchecked until this night. The aftermath of the attack sent shockwaves through the community. Jenkins and Parker survived, but they were left traumatized. Their lives changed forever. For them, justice seemed like a distant dream, but they made a courageous decision to speak up, to tell their story, and to trust in a system that had often betrayed them. The truth could no longer be ignored. When federal investigators got involved, it became clear that this wasn't just a single incident. It was part of a larger pattern of abuse within the Rankin County Sheriff's Office. The Goon Squad had operated with impunity for far too long, and their reckoning was at hand. Federal prosecutors filed civil rights charges against McAlpin, Edward, and the other 4 members of the squad: Jeffrey Middleton, Daniel Abdoki, Joshua Hartfield, and others. The list of charges was long: conspiracy to violate civil rights, obstruction of justice, and discharge of a firearm during a crime of violence, amongst others. The weight of their crimes was finally catching up to them. As the court hearings progressed, the reality of what these officers had done became clear to the public. They had sworn an oath to protect, but instead they had preyed on the very people they were meant to serve. The community's outrage grew, but so did their determination. "This isn't just about Michael and Eddie," said Angela English, president of the local NAACP chapter, during one of the many protests outside the courthouse. "This is about every black man and woman in Mississippi who has been mistreated, brutalized, or ignored by the system. Today we're standing up. Today we demand justice." The community wasn't just demanding sentences. They were demanding change. Rankin County Sheriff Brian Bailey came under fire for his role in allowing the Goon Squad to operate unchecked. Local activists and leaders called for his resignation, holding rallies and making their voices heard at every turn. But this wasn't just about getting rid of the bad cops. This was about systematic change, about ensuring that no one else would ever have to endure what Jenkins and Parker had to face. The community wanted to rebuild trust between law enforcement and the people they served. They wanted accountability, not just punishment. When the sentences were handed down, it was a victory. McAlpin, Elwood, Middleton, Abdoki, and the others would spend the next decades of their lives in behind bars. Their sentences ranged from 10 to 27 years, the harshest penalties given to those who had led the group. The court's decision sent a clear message: no one is above the law, and justice will be served. But as Angela English said, this chapter of the book has been written, but the book has not finished. The Goon Squad may have been taken down, but the work wasn't over. The Mississippi House of Representatives and Senate passed a bill expanding oversight over law enforcement, allowing the state board to investigate and revoke the licenses of officers accused of misconduct. It was a step forward, but the community knew there was more to be done. Jenkins and Parker would never fully recover from the trauma they had endured, but they had sparked something bigger than themselves. They had inspired a movement, one that would hold those in power accountable while still ensuring that safety was maintained in the streets. The streets of Rankin County and Mississippi as a whole would never be the same. There would still be challenges, still be moments of fear and uncertainty, but now there was also hope. Hope that the community could rebuild, that they could create a system where justice wasn't just an abstract concept, but a lived reality for everyone. And as the people of Mississippi marched through the streets, they did so with their heads held high, knowing that they had the power to demand better. They would continue to fight for justice, for equality, and for a future where no one had to fear the very people sworn to protect them. We, the people, would hold law enforcement accountable, not just by sending the bad apples to prison, but by changing the very fabric of the system itself. They would maintain the safety of the streets, but not through fear, through trust, through justice, through a community united in its resolve. The Goon Squad was gone, but the people remained, and that is where the real power lay. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe.
Baby love, my baby love, I need you, oh, I need you. But all you do is treat me bad, break my heart and leave me sad. And tell me, what did I do wrong?